Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Kashif Kamran and today I am discussing with you a topic known as environmental management system. Firstly, this is basically the addendum to lecture number 5, and by the lecture number 5 of the syllabus area A and B, I have completed my discussion around integrated reporting. Now, already till lecture 5, we had a lot of discussion about normative approaches and instrumental approaches. A lot of businesses being concerned working towards betterment of planet, betterment of society. We've already discussed a lot of approaches under Gray, Owen, Adam, which are approaches towards working for betterment of planet, something like deep ecologist, etc. Now, this particular topic is in connection with the previous discussions we had on the approach an organization can have towards people and planet. Uh, this is about systems, environmental management system. If any organization has a concern about planet, protecting planet, and protecting the environmental damage or repairing the environmental damage, or they're really concerned about environmental sustainability, those particular organizations will very proactively have an approach towards having proper environmental management systems in place. The systems will guide them about what they should do for environment, how they should document what they're doing for environment, and how they should ensure that the damage being caused by the organization to the environment is being reduced down. You're all very familiar with this term system. Anything which becomes part of system, that's more like your standard operating procedure that basically becomes part and parcel of everyday affair of the organization. And when something is in the form of the system, you can check your performance against it, you can monitor your performance against it, you can identify your weaknesses against it, and you can take corrective actions too. So just like an internal control system we have in organizations, this is basically an environmental management system. How would you manage the environment? And again, this is only for organizations who do take environment as something very important. Normative organizations, organizations who are very concerned about environmental sustainability. Now, there are two sort of systems that exist globally in part of your syllabus. One is ISO 14001, and the second is EMAS. Both are certifications. If your company take ISO 14000 or EMAS, you will get a certificate of your compliance with environment, and the certificate is renewed almost every year. You need to show that you're complying with environment each year, and you will be eligible for these certificates. You must have seen a lot of advertisements by company, and in those advertisements, uh, in those advertisements, the companies claim that we are an ISO 14001 compliant company. So you must have seen a lot of eco labelings on products, the product labels. You must have seen they've shown that we are an ISO 14001 company. So you do take privilege once you've taken this certificate, because you want to show your customers and consumer that we are environmental friendly company. We already have a certification towards environment. We already have a system in place. So these systems works like certificates which renewed every year. You are checked whether you're complying with the system, and each year your certificate becomes renewable. You can use them as your marketing strategies as well, in your marketing gimmicks as well, because this can really give you a potential edge over your competitor as well. So let's first see the ISO 14000. What are key expectations of ISO 14000 if you're implementing that as a system in your organization for environmental management? In terms of ISO 14000, which is a broad series, we are covering the ISO 14001 as part of that series. The series itself is known as ISO 14000, but we are dealing with ISO 14001 standard in the SBL paper. The ISO 14001 environmental management standards exist to help organizations. So these are environmental management standards which are globally accepted, International Standards Organization, ISO. And these standards have been developed globally to help organizations to have an environmental management systems in place. So this standard exists to help organizations, number one, to minimize how their operations negatively affect their environment. So once you put this system in place, Once you put the ISO 14001 in place, once you get this certification in place, the very first thing you need to do is to study how my company is affecting the environment and minimizing that. So your focus has to be on minimize the negative effect your company is having on environment. So you need to study the negative effects. You need to study where are the loopholes within my company which is affecting the environment, and how can I reduce them, minimize them. You need to set goals. You need to set targets for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year. And each year you need to bring an improvement. If you are bringing improvement, your certificate for ISO 14001 will keep renewed every year. Comply. The second focus of this is to comply with the relevant laws and regulations within your country about environment. So in whichever country you are existing, the laws and regulations of your country relating to environment should be adhered and followed. And you should have evidence of that. You should have evidence to show to ISO as an organization that we are complying with laws and regulations of our country. You should have evidence to show to ISO that we have minimized the negative effect of our operations from the last year to this year. And last, regular improvement of above. You need to show this to ISO 14000 that our compliance rate is better than the last year, or we have minimized more than the last year. So a regular improvement of above. There's just three things, but that shows you are committed as an organization. That is the reason you took this ISO 14001, because you had a proactive approach towards environmental sustainability. You want to ensure that my company is not damaging the environment. I want to minimize that. I want to ensure that my company is complying with laws and regulations. At the end of the day, this will positively affect your repute as a business. This will positively affect your goodwill as a business. It will positively impact the shareholder returns. It will positively impact your competitive advantage, and you can use them as marketing tools later. This is global, right? ISO 14000 is global. Any company can take it globally, just like your international standards on auditing or international accounting standards. These are international standards organizations, the global standards for environment. The next is EMAS. EMAS stands for Eco Management and Audit Scheme. So E is eco, M is again the management. So eco management, so eco is the environment, right? Eco management and audit scheme. We didn't had audit in ISO 14000. We just had three things in ISO 14000: minimize, comply, improvement. We didn't had that audit reflection anywhere talking about internal or external auditor checking your compliance or minimizing. No. But in this scheme, we had eco management, something like ISO 14000, something very similar to ISO 14001, eco management. But what is extra here? The extra is the audit scheme. You need to verify your claims. Your claims should be verified by the auditor, the independent auditor or the internal auditor. So there is an extra pressure. The eco management and audit scheme is not a global scheme. This is only for the companies which exist in European Union, EU. So companies existing in EU will follow EMAS. This is not a global scheme. The global scheme is ISO 14001. So the companies in EU will be subjected to EMAS. They need to follow this eco management and audit scheme on a voluntarily basis. Again, those companies who have a normative approach, they will proactively move towards this, and this will then be used for their competitive advantage and better repute of a business. Let's see what is the difference between ISO 14001 and EMAS. EMAS is a management tool for companies to evaluate their current situation, their damage they're doing to environment, and how can they minimize that. Report to the shareholders about their environmental compliance, about their environmental targets, progress against their targets, something like integrated reporting, and improve their environmental performance each year. So they need to evaluate their present situation. They need to see what is happening currently in the organization in terms of environmental damage. How can they improve it every year? How can they set targets for next 5 years? How can they put a report to the shareholders that this is our targets, this is our actual, see, we are improving, we're progressing, we are working towards environmental sustainability. For the report, you need an assurance. You need someone independent to review it. And that's where the role of the auditor comes in. So that's where the audit scheme comes in. Evaluate, report, and improve. That's the three critical terms here. Okay, number one, it's a tool which the emphasis of this scheme is on. Just like ISO 14000, let's see what is the emphasizable part of EMAS. Targets and improvements. So as an organization, you need to set your targets for 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. How would you reduce your how would you improve your environmental sustainability or your footprints? How would you reduce the consumption of water? How would you reduce the consumption? How would you reduce the greenhouse gases? Or how would you reduce the wastage? Targets and improvements. On-site inspections by the internal auditor, IA. So the internal auditor should go to your sites, check, are you taking practical steps to ensure the greenhouse gases are going down? Are you taking practical steps to ensure your water consumption is going down? Are you ensuring practical steps to ensure your waste is going down? So on-site inspection, internal auditor should do that. And that's where the audit scheme is becoming very important. Audit scheme. Disclosures and verification. Report. Disclosures to the shareholders against your targets you have set for environment and your actual performance. But this targets and actual performance should be verified. The verification is now coming from the external auditor. So the external auditor should be involved as part of the sustainability audit, or the external auditor should be hired as part of a green audit in EU, or the external auditor should be hired as part of an environmental audit. These are very important terminologies. And we know in the Europe, you have these environmental audits, you have green audits, where the external auditor gives a moderate level of assurance, not reasonable assurance, moderate level of assurance on your actual performance against the environment. So look at EMAS. It's very similar to ISO 14000. You have you need to minimize your environmental damage. You need to comply with laws and regulations. But look at the extra part here. Number 2, number 3, on-site inspection by internal auditor to ensure that the steps are being taken, are in the correct way, are being implemented, and disclosure to the shareholder and verification by the external auditor. So that was missing from ISO 14000. In ISO 14000, we didn't have a reporting element, or we didn't have an assurance element. We didn't have internal and external auditor. But in EMAS, we do have it. But again, EMAS is confined to EU, European Union. EMAS is again to be adopted voluntarily. It's not mandatory. Any company adopting it can take it as a marketing tool, as a competitive advantage, as your better reputation as a business. But if you adopt EMAS, then you have to use this tool for targets and improvements, for on-site inspections, and for disclosures and verification. So that's what basically EMAS is. So if any terminology is used like EMAS in any requirement, or ISO 14000 in any requirement, or any requirement of the exam paper uses the terminology environmental management system, you can apply any of them. So if the examiner is saying, discuss the environmental management systems the company can put in place, or as a consultant, suggest the environmental management systems the company should have in place. So immediately you can click, oh, it could either be ISO 14001 or EMAS. You can choose any one and apply. If the examiner specifically use EMAS, then apply EMAS, or ISO 14000, then apply ISO 14000. So I hope this addendum to lecture number 5 would immensely help you with your knowledge around the systems, ISO 14001 and EMAS. Your tutor, Kashif Kamran, signing off from this discussion.